The night sky was unusually clear over the White House. From the rooftop observatory, President Evelyn Harper watched the stars, a distant, uncaring sea of lights that had once seemed infinite. But now it felt more like an invitation, or a warning. Her communicator buzzed on the table beside her, its glow cutting through the silence of the night. Harper reached for it without hesitation. The screen flickered before displaying the official EDF insignia. An urgent message from command. "Ma'am," came the voice on the other side. Lieutenant Colonel Anya Graves, a seasoned officer from the Earth Defense Forces, her tone clipped, deficient. "We've intercepted a signal, an echo of the Mayday." Harper's pulse quickened. The Mayday, that dreaded distress call sent out by Earth during the Xalar invasion, a cry for help that had triggered humanity's worst conflict. The Xalar had come in overwhelming numbers, their technology far superior to anything Earth had at the time. And yet, Earth had fought back, turned the tide, and somehow, against all odds, driven them away. But at what cost? The Mayday had been a symbol of Earth's desperation. Now, decades later, hearing it again, in some twisted, distorted form, could mean only one thing. Something, someone, had responded. "What do you mean, Echo?" Harper's voice was steady, though a knot had formed in her stomach. "Is this a retransmission? Or something new?" "It's new," Lieutenant Colonel Graves replied. "Not from the Xalar. It's coming from deep space. The origin point is still being triangulated, but the pattern matches the Mayday signal's unique frequency and modulation. We're not sure if it's intentional, but it's almost as if the signal is calling back. Like it was waiting." Harper stared out over the horizon, feeling a cold chill run down her spine. The Mayday had always been a reminder of how close humanity had come to extinction. For it to be answered by an unknown force, no less, was both an enigma and a nightmare waiting to happen. "What are the chances it's hostile?" she asked, forcing herself to focus. The implications of the signal were already weighing heavily on her, but she knew better than to jump to conclusions. "We're running simulations now, ma'am. We're tracking any movement in nearby sectors. Nothing yet. But whatever this is, it's been waiting for a long time. The disturbance it caused in the outer system suggests something big is on its way, and we need to be ready." Harper's thoughts flickered to the state of the world. Earth was far from unified. Over the past few decades, the scars of the Xalar War had barely begun to heal. The Earth Defense Forces, though formidable, had been relegated to shadows, their most dangerous weaponry and tactics buried under international treaties. The world had hoped for peace, but now, this. An unknown force. A new Mayday. "I'll have the full council briefed," Harper said, her tone unwavering. "Prepare for the worst, Colonel. We cannot afford to be caught off guard again." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, softly, Graves added, "I've sent a team to the outer moon bases to assess possible alien presence. If it's them, if it's the Xalar or someone like them, they will know we're here." "We'll be ready," Harper replied, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, the stars no longer felt distant. They felt like eyes watching her, waiting for Earth to make its move. The fate of the planet had just been thrust into the unknown once again. Commander Aisha Kwan stood at the head of the long conference table, her eyes scanning the faces of the men and women seated before her. The room was a stark contrast to the one she had led years ago, when the world had been united by the desperate will to survive. Now, the room felt fractured, just like the planet. "I know what you're all thinking," she began, her voice cutting through the tension in the air. "We've been here before. We've rebuilt, we've recovered, and we've buried the most dangerous aspects of our last war. But we cannot afford the luxury of peace any longer." There were murmurs around the table, some of disbelief, others of barely contained fear. The Mayday signal had rattled humanity, reopening old wounds. It wasn't just the threat of the unknown that had everyone on edge. It was the fact that the world had spent decades trying to move on from the horrors of the Xalar invasion. And now, it seemed, the past was coming back to haunt them. Death Sion. Revenant is no longer a hypothetical, Quan continued, her eyes narrowing. The time has come to activate it. The remnants of Earth's greatest weapons need to be unleashed. In the back of the room, General Victor Ramirez, the head of the newly formed Earth Defense Council, spoke up. His voice was hoarse, as if the words had been stuck in his throat for too long. You're suggesting we bring back everything. The splicers, the forge fleet, the orbital weapons, all of it. Yes, Quan said, unwavering. We need everything. This isn't just about pushing back the Xalar or whatever race comes next. This is about making sure we never face extinction again. General Ramirez didn't hide his skepticism. We've outlawed these programs for a reason, Commander. The splicers, half human, half experiment. That was a monster of our own creation. The forge fleet, machines that build weapons faster than we can destroy them. And the orbital kinetics. We never used them because they could wipe out entire continents. And yet, we stand on the brink of war with an enemy we don't understand. Quan shot back. This is no longer about morals or treaties. It's about survival. Earth's survival. And if we don't act decisively, we will be reduced to rubble. Again. She paused, letting her words sink in. No one spoke. The weight of the decision hung heavily in the air, thick and suffocating. What's the alternative? Quan finally asked. Do we sit back, as we did before, and wait for the Xalar, or whoever else, again to bring their war to our doorsteps? I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you what needs to happen. It was a risk, one that Quan knew all too well. The splicers were a mistake, the product of desperate scientists who had crossed ethical lines they shouldn't have. The forge fleet, too, had been built as a fail-safe in case Earth's defenses failed. And the orbital weapons were a deterrent, capable of devastating whole countries. But each was also a weapon of unimaginable power, something Earth couldn't afford to leave dormant. You won't be alone in this, Quan added, her voice softening slightly. The Earth Defense Forces will be by your side. But we need to move fast. The enemy is already within striking distance. The room fell into an uneasy silence, but the reality of the situation hung in the air like a dark cloud. No one could deny that Quan was right. If the unknown force approaching Earth had the same kind of technology that Xalar possessed, if they were even more advanced, humanity's only hope was to unleash its most dangerous tools. I'll initiate the protocol, Ramirez said at last, his voice resigned, but resolute. But I need your promise, Commander. Promise me you'll keep control. The last time we went down this road, we nearly destroyed ourselves. I won't let that happen, Quan replied, her voice steady. We'll fight this war on our terms, but we need to act now. As she left the room, Quan's mind raced with what lay ahead. She had fought against impossible odds before, but something about this felt different. The enemy, whoever they were, wouldn't be easy to defeat, and the weapons she was about to awaken, they might be more than Earth could control. But there was no turning back now. The first skirmish came unexpectedly, a shockwave that rippled through Earth's defenses before anyone had a chance to react. The Virene, alien scavengers from the fringe worlds, had been detected on the far edges of the Kuiper Belt, close enough to Earth's orbit to send a cold shiver down the spines of the military brass. Their fleet, an unremarkable collection of ragged warships, drifted ominously toward the inner solar system, a sharp contrast to the sleek, highly organized Xalar forces that had nearly wiped Earth out. But there was no time to contemplate the difference. This was a real threat. Commander Aisha Quan stood in the command center, staring at the massive holomap as the red blips of the alien fleet closed in. The room hummed with activity, officers and technicians feeding data into consoles and barking orders. We need to engage them before they get any closer, said Lieutenant Colonel Graves, her voice tense. She had been with Quan through the First War, and her face betrayed no trace of the shock and fear that had struck others in the room. "We can't afford another invasion." Quan nodded, her thoughts racing. The Xalar had already taught humanity a brutal lesson. Never underestimate an enemy, even one that appeared disorganized. And these Varine, they weren't just scavengers. They were opportunists. They had seen Earth's vulnerability in the wake of the Xalar's retreat and had come to test it. "Activate the drone fleets," Quan ordered, her voice cold. "And deploy the Black Orbit satellites. We're not going to give them a chance to get close." The drones launched from Earth's orbital stations with unrelenting precision, a swarm of sleek, AI-controlled fighters that tore through space toward the Varine fleet. At the same time, the Black Orbit satellites, armed with their devastating tungsten rods, aligned above Earth, ready to drop their deadly payloads on anything that dared to approach. It was a beautiful and terrifying sight. Humanity's foe might hurl toward an alien force with nothing but the cold emptiness of space between them. But the Varine were not as helpless as they appeared. As the drone fleet engaged, the Varine ships deployed strange, twisting shields that absorbed and redirected incoming fire, leaving Earth's fighters struggling to adapt. Quan's eyes narrowed. The technology wasn't alien. It was scavenged, adapted from other civilizations. "We're not dealing with amateurs here," she muttered under her breath. And then the unthinkable happened. A single Varine ship broke off from the rest of the formation and powered up its engines. It wasn't retreating. It was coming directly for Earth's orbital defense stations. The ship's hull shimmered, cloaking itself from detection, and within seconds, it was within firing range of the nearest satellite. The satellite's defense grid activated, an automatic countermeasure. But the Varine ship responded with an electromagnetic pulse that scrambled Earth's systems. The satellite's defenses failed. It was vulnerable. The Varine ship struck. There was a flash of blinding light, and the satellite was gone, obliterated in a single devastating blast. Quan's breath caught in her throat. The attack had been swift, precise, and it marked a critical turning point. The Varine had already bypassed Earth's most advanced orbital defenses, and it seemed clear they were more than just scavengers. They were strategists. "Deploy the splicers," Quan ordered sharply. "It's time to level the playing field." There was a moment of hesitation. The splicers, genetic warriors created in the dark years after the Xalar invasion, had been kept in cryo-sleep, their existence shrouded in secrecy. They were Earth's ultimate weapon, engineered for brutal, decisive combat. But their very existence raised questions of morality, of what humanity was willing to do to survive. "We'll need authorization from the Council," one of the officers protested. Quan didn't even blink. "I'll handle the Council. Wake them up. Now." Within minutes, the command was executed. Deep beneath Earth's surface, at a highly classified military facility, the Splicer Corps were stirred from their stasis chambers. Pale, muscle-bound figures with cybernetic enhancements, they awoke with the eerie precision of soldiers long accustomed to battle. Quan stood in front of a mirror, her reflection distorted by the glow of the control panels. The Splicers would be humanity's shield, and their sword. But as she watched them rise, a dark thought lingered in the back of her mind. Could humanity control the weapons it had created, or had it crossed a line from which there was no return? The Varine had just made their first move. Now, Earth would fight back. The battle above Earth had escalated quickly. The Varine fleet, though ragged and disjointed, fought with a deadly precision that belied their seemingly desperate nature. The drones and fighter fleets had been forced into a defensive retreat, the electromagnetic pulse from the alien ship making coordination almost impossible. Even the splicers, still being readied for deployment, had been delayed. Humanity's first response had faltered under the Varine's surprising tactics. Yet, amidst the chaos, a transmission had been sent. "Commander Quan," Lieutenant Colonel Graves' voice crackled through her earpiece. "You need to hear this. The Varine have sent a message. It's a proposal." Quan, standing in the heart of the command center, froze. A proposal? After the destruction of the orbital defenses, after the attack on their satellites, the Varine wanted to negotiate. It was unfathomable, but Quan knew better than to dismiss any offer in the middle of a crisis. "Put it through," Quan ordered, her tone icy. The screen before her flickered to life, showing the face of a Varine emissary. An alien with a tall, angular frame, a sharp metallic sheen to its skin. Its eyes were eerily human-like, but its voice, though soft, carried an unsettling weight. "We are the Varine," the emissary began, speaking in the universal translator's strange, disjointed cadence. "We seek not your destruction, but an understanding. Your war against us need not happen. We offer an alliance." Quan's heart skipped a beat. An alliance? After everything that had happened, after the near destruction of Earth's orbital defenses, the idea of an alliance seemed absurd. "You've attacked our satellites, destroy our defense grid, and tried to cripple our forces," Quan said, her voice low and filled with contempt. "And now you want an alliance. Explain." The emissary remained calm, its expression unreadable. "We seek to avoid the death of your people, Commander. We are not the true threat. There is a greater force, one that we are fleeing. It is only a matter of time before they reach your world. The Xettler. They are coming again." A chill ran down Quan's spine. The Xettler, the nightmare that humanity had barely survived once before. The thought of them returning was a nightmare made real. "The Xettler," Quan repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "You're saying you're running from them?" "Yes," the Varine emissary replied. "We have been hunted, scattered. We are refugees in the galaxy. The Xettler will destroy everything in their path. And if they find you, they will eradicate your species just as they have done to others." The silence that followed was heavy with disbelief. Earth had barely survived the Xettler's first invasion, and now the possibility of a second seemed inevitable, a shadow looming over humanity once again. But the Varine's words, desperate, pleading, were a stark contrast to their initial hostile attack. Quan turned away from the screen, pacing slowly. Her mind raced. Could this alien species, the Varine, really be telling the truth? Or was this just another manipulation, a way to weaken humanity's resolve before a larger force struck? "Commander," Graves' voice snapped her from her thoughts. "I don't trust them. This could be a trick. They've already proven they're willing to attack us. Now they want to make a deal. What's their real play here?" Quan nodded slowly, her jaw clenched. She couldn't ignore the potential truth in the Varine's words, but she also couldn't afford to be blinded by hope. Earth couldn't afford another mistake like the one made when the Xettler first arrived. "I don't trust them either," Quan finally replied, her voice a razor's edge of authority. "But right now, we have no choice. We have to find out if they're telling the truth. But if they're lying..." She turned back to the emissary's image, her face hardening. "If this is some kind of trap, we'll be ready." The Varine emissary's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the edge in Quan's voice. But there was no turning back now. The negotiations were about to begin. But in war, every alliance was a gamble. And this one could be humanity's last. The Varine's transmission was over, but the uncertainty lingered in the command center like a storm on the horizon. Quan stood at the front of the room, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. The proposal of an alliance weighed heavily on her mind. An alliance with the very creatures who had just attacked Earth's defenses. It was a gamble, one that could either prevent the return of the Xettler or push humanity into another war they might not survive. "Commander," Graves's voice broke through Quan's thoughts, her expression a mixture of concern and suspicion. "We can't seriously consider this, can we? The Varine are scavengers, opportunists. What if this is just another trick? What if they're already working with the Xettler, trying to weaken us for the real invasion?" Quan exhaled sharply, her mind churning. The logical part of her agreed with Graves. The Varine were not trustworthy, and their sudden plea for an alliance after years of aggression seemed too convenient. But there was one thing that gnawed at her: the Xalar. The thought of their return was a nightmare that haunted her every waking moment. "We don't have the luxury of choice," Quan finally said, her voice hard. "If the Xalar are truly coming back, we need all the help we can get. We can't afford to be divided, especially not now." Graves frowned but didn't argue. She knew better than anyone that Earth was walking a razor-thin line between survival and annihilation. The decision to negotiate was made. Quan activated the secure channel, preparing to send a counter-response to the Varine. But before she could issue the message, another report came in. "Commander," a voice crackled from one of the junior officers. "We've detected a large unidentified object entering the outer edges of the solar system. It's on a direct course toward Earth." The room fell silent. The Varine were not the only ones here. "Is it the Xalar?" Quan asked, her voice tight. "We can't confirm yet, but we're tracking it now." "It's massive," the officer replied, voice trembling. "It's unlike anything we've seen." Quan felt the blood drain from her face. The Xalar, or something worse, was already on its way. The Varine had been right, or at least they weren't lying about that. But the question now was, could they be trusted with the truth? "Prepare the Forge fleet," Quan ordered, her voice cold, "and wake the splicers. We need them on the front lines. Immediately. No more delays." But even as she issued the commands, a deep sense of dread settled over her. What if the Varine were simply the first wave? What if they weren't fleeing from the Xalar, but guiding humanity into the very trap they had set? "We're going to have to play this carefully," Quan murmured to herself, feeling the weight of every decision pressing on her shoulders. Graves watched her, the same unease reflected in her eyes. "What's the plan, Commander?" "We make contact with the Varine again," Quan said, her voice steely. "But this time, we don't trust them blindly. I need to know everything about their real capabilities, and whether they've had contact with the Xalar." Graves nodded, but she couldn't hide the skepticism on her face. "I hope you're right about this." "I don't have a choice," Quan replied, her eyes hard. "But one way or another, we'll stop the Xalar, or we'll die trying." As the fleet prepared for the coming assault, the tension between Earth and the Varine reached its boiling point. Quan had no idea whether this fragile alliance would save them or doom them all. But with the shadow of the Xalar looming large on the horizon, Earth had no other choice but to trust in the enemies they had made. The clock was ticking, and soon they would all learn the truth at whatever cost it came. The object that had appeared on the radar was no longer an enigma. As it neared Earth's orbit, it revealed its full form, a massive ship, colossal in size, far larger than anything humanity had ever seen. Its silhouette was jagged, resembling the clawed edge of some ancient beast, and it moved with a terrifying, silent grace. The ship's dark surface seemed to absorb the surrounding starlight, making it appear as though it was not of this world at all. Quan stood at the helm of the command center, her gaze fixed on the projections of the alien vessel. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet chaos around her. "They've come. We're estimating time of contact at 6 hours, Commander," one of the officers reported. "We've sent all available fighters to intercept, but this ship is unlike anything we've ever encountered." Quan didn't respond immediately. Her mind was focused, calculating every possibility. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her. Humanity's fate was about to be sealed, one way or another. If the Varine's warning about the Xalar was true, this would be Earth's second chance to survive, or its final chance to fight back. At the same time, a secure transmission from the Varine emissary flickered to life. This time, the alien's face was more haggard, its voice strained. "Commander Quan, we have no time. The Xalar are here. We cannot stop them alone. You must join us, or they will wipe you out again." "We are already preparing to engage," Quan replied coolly. "But your fleet will need to do more than warn us. If you want to survive, You need to fight." The Virene emissary's face flickered with something approaching fear. "Our ships are not enough. The Xalar's forces outnumber us 10 to 1. And their technology. It's far beyond what we can handle. But together, we may have a chance." Quan studied the emissary for a long moment. Every part of her wanted to dismiss this as another trick, another desperate plea from a species that had shown itself willing to kill for survival. But the urgency in its voice, the visible fear in its expression, was real. "They are preparing a planetary assault," the Virene continued. "They're war machines, if you don't stop them now. They will target your cities, your governments, your people. We can help you hold them off. But only if we fight together." Quan was silent for a moment, weighing the risks. The splicers were ready, the Forge fleet was mobilized, and the orbital weapons were primed. But could humanity really trust the Virene? And if they were right, if the Xalar were truly back, could Earth afford not to take the risk? "We'll fight together," Quan said, her voice resolute. "But make no mistake, if this turns out to be a trick, we will not hesitate to finish what we started." The Virene emissary nodded, a hint of relief in its features. "You are wise, Commander. Time is short. Prepare your defenses." As the communication ended, Quan turned back to the battle map, where the massive alien ship continued to close in on Earth. A strange, cold dread washed over her. She had no idea what the Xalar had planned, but she knew one thing for certain. Humanity had no choice but to fight. "All units, prepare for engagement," Quan commanded, her voice ringing with authority. "We hold the line here. Earth will not fall today." Her hands gripped the edge of the table, her mind racing with strategies, but there was no time for hesitation. She looked around the command center, seeing the faces of her crew, soldiers, scientists, officers, everyone caught in the same storm. But now, for the first time in a long while, they were no longer facing an invasion from the unknown alone. Together with the Virene, or against them, if it came to that, they would either defeat the Xalar or face extinction. And whatever the cost, Quan was determined to make Earth stand a battle they would remember. The moment Earth's forces mobilized, the atmosphere in the command center shifted. It was no longer a place for contemplation. It had become the heart of a machine of war. Officers barked orders, technicians scrambled at their consoles, and the hum of the engines in the Forge fleet's hangars was felt like a tremor beneath their feet. The battle for Earth had begun, and every second mattered. "Commander," Graves called from across the room, her voice steady but filled with a grim intensity. "We've received word from the Forge fleet. They're ready to engage. Splicer Corps is mobilizing. 200 units primed for deployment." Quan nodded, her gaze fixed on the large, pulsing holographic map that dominated the command center. Earth's forces had formed a ring of defense around their homeworld, a defensive perimeter that stretched from the inner atmosphere to the farthest reaches of their orbit. The Virene had fallen into position alongside them, their ships arrayed in tight formations, but it was clear this battle was about to become a test of all humanity's strength. The Xalar had arrived. "Launch the Forge fleet," Quan ordered. Her voice was like ice, cutting through the tension in the room. "We need to take the fight to them before they land anything on the surface. We'll have to engage at close range." Graves didn't hesitate. "Understood. Deploying now." The Forge fleet's ships, gleaming with the latest in human technological advancements, began their high-speed approach toward the looming alien vessel. These warships were humanity's pride. Built with technology salvaged from the first Xalar invasion, they were armed with energy cannons, plasma turrets, and kinetic shields capable of taking on the largest of threats. But the Xalar were not to be underestimated. Even as the Forge fleet locked into position, Quan could sense the enormous challenge ahead. The alien ship was massive. Its design looked like a beast of war, with dark energy signatures pulsing around its frame. Then, without warning, the Xalar ship unleashed its first strike. A blinding wave of energy erupted from the core of the alien vessel, a pulse that sent shockwaves through the defensive line. Forge fleet ships were caught off guard, their shields flaring as the pulse tore into their hulls. Quan's stomach tightened as a series of red alerts flashed across her screen. Incoming fire. Shields holding, but we've lost 2 ships. One of the officers shouted. Counterattack. Quan barked, her voice commanding as her hands flew over the controls. Return fire with everything we've got. Engage at all levels. Don't give them any space to breathe. The Forge fleet responded immediately, launching a barrage of plasma and kinetic energy at the Xalar ship. The alien ship responded in kind, sending another devastating blast toward Earth's defenders. But the Forge fleet's advanced technology held fast. The battle above Earth was unfolding in real time. Every second felt like an eternity. Meanwhile, the splicers were deployed. These monstrous, genetically engineered warriors leaped from their stasis pods, their enhanced muscles and cybernetic limbs primed for destruction. Clad in black battle armor, they were the epitome of humanity's desperation. Their first mission: secure Earth's orbital defenses, hold back any boarding parties, and ensure the planet's final defense remained intact. Commander Quan watched the feeds closely, her focus unbroken. The splicers were moving with savage precision, tearing through the Xalar's boarding vessels as they entered Earth's atmosphere. Each strike from a splicer tore through alien armor like tissue paper, their weapons, massive, double-edged energy blades, cutting through everything in their path. For a moment, Quan allowed herself a fleeting thought of hope. The splicers, monstrous as they were doing their job. But the Xalar were relentless. They're adapting faster than we can react, Graves reported, her voice strained as she tracked the battle. We're losing ground in the outer defenses. Keep pushing forward, Quan replied, her voice unwavering. We can't let them breach the atmosphere. Earth's fate is tied to this fight. Hold them at all costs. As the Forge fleet continued its relentless assault on the Xalar ship, Quan's mind raced. There was no room for error now. If Earth faltered here, if they couldn't hold the line, that Xalar would be on their doorstep in mere hours. But something in her gut told her that this was only the beginning. The real fight hadn't even started. Quan's eyes narrowed as the alien vessel moved closer, preparing to unleash its most powerful weapon. If they didn't stop it now, brace for impact, Quan shouted. The countdown had begun. The massive Xalar vessel, now only a few minutes from entering Earth's atmosphere, pulsed with ominous energy. Its core was charging, a brilliant flare of light building at its center. This was their final weapon, the one they had used to decimate entire worlds. If it fired, Earth would burn. Quan's eyes never left the projection, her mind focused entirely on the battle unfolding above her. The Forge fleet had suffered heavy casualties, with several ships already destroyed or crippled by the relentless barrage of Xalar fire. The splicers, though fierce and formidable, were beginning to feel the strain. The Xalar's forces were adapting with a terrifying speed, countering each of their tactics and responding with brutal efficiency. We've got 5 minutes, Graves shouted from her station, the urgency in her voice palpable. If we don't stop them now, we'll lose everything. Quan's hands moved over the control panel as she relayed orders to the remaining ships. Focus fire on that core. Do not let it charge fully. If we don't take it out now, nothing will be left to save. The Forge fleet's remaining ships responded, closing in on the Xalar vessel with desperate precision. Plasma cannons, energy pulses, and kinetic projectiles fired in synchronized bursts. But the Xalar's shields held strong. It was clear that their ship was built for this very moment, designed to withstand everything humanity had thrown at it. On the surface, the battle raged. The splicers, relentless in their assault, tore through the Xalar forces that had made it past the orbital defense perimeter. Each splicer was a machine of death, their weapons slicing through Xalar soldiers with brutal efficiency. But for every alien they cut down, 2 more seemed to take their place. "Commander, we can't keep up," a splicer sergeant reported through the comms. "Their forces are endless." Quan clenched her fists, her heart pounding. It wasn't just the orbital defense that was at risk. It was the very survival of Earth. If the Xalor could breach the atmosphere, they would unleash hell on the planet's surface. "Switch to emergency protocols," Quan ordered, her voice sharp with authority. "Activate the orbital cannons. Target the Xalor ship's core. No second chances." As the last of the Forge Fleet's ships regrouped, the Earth's final weapon, the orbital cannons, came online. These massive energy weapons, stationed on Earth's outermost satellites, had been designed to deliver a devastating, concentrated burst of energy, enough to destroy even the most fortified of enemy ships. The cannons fired. A beam of pure, searing energy blasted from the orbital array, tearing through space at unimaginable speed. The Xalor ship's shields flickered, struggling to hold back the energy, but it was too late. The beam struck the core with an earth-shattering explosion, sending a shockwave that rattled the entire fleet. The Xalor vessel reeled, its protective barriers faltering, and for a split second, it seemed as if time had stopped. Then, the Xalor ship exploded. The massive vessel erupted in a violent burst of light and fire, a cataclysmic detonation that sent fragments scattering in all directions. The Forge Fleet, still close enough to be caught in the explosion, had no chance to evade the shockwave. Ships were torn apart, their hulls cracked open, and crew members lost in an instant. Yet, somehow, Earth's forces had prevailed. Silence descended for a brief, heart-stopping moment. The Xalor were defeated, but the cost was staggering. "Commander, we've lost contact with several ships," Graves reported, her voice tight. "Our casualties are high, but we've done it. The Xalor, they're gone." Quan let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, her body tense with relief, but it was fleeting. The loss of life, both human and Vereen, was staggering. The battle was won, but the scars would last for generations. "Prepare for an assessment," Quan said, her voice cold but resolute, "and get the survivors into recovery. This war may be over, but we're not done yet. The Vereen, we need to figure out where we stand." Graves turned to Quan, her expression somber. "What about them, Commander? The Vereen. Do we trust them now?" Quan took a long moment before answering. "We'll find out. The war isn't over. It's just beginning." As the command center began to calm, Quan stepped away from the control panel, her mind focused not just on the aftermath of the battle, but on the future. Earth had survived, but the Vereen, with their mysterious motives, were still a threat, or a potential ally. Humanity had won the day, but the war was far from over. And Quan knew one thing for certain. If the Xalor had shown up once, they could show up again. This would not be the last battle for Earth.